The massive alien warships filled the sky above New Haven Colony like dark storm clouds. Inside the lead vessel, Commander Veltar studied the human settlement below with cold satisfaction. These soft-looking mammals would fall just like all the others. The Zelathi Empire had conquered over 200 worlds using the same terrifying method. "Release the Vorthok," Veltar commanded, his voice echoing through the ship's bridge. The cargo bay doors opened with a mechanical hiss. From the depths of the ship emerged something that had haunted the nightmares of countless civilizations. The Vorthok stood 6 meters tall, its body covered in sharp crystalline plates that caught the sunlight like broken glass. Each claw was longer than a human arm, capable of slicing through steel as easily as paper. Its eyes glowed with an inner fire that spoke of endless hunger and rage. The creature had been starved for weeks to make it even more vicious than usual. As it dropped toward the planet's surface, its roar shook the very air. This sound had been the last thing millions of beings had ever heard. But something unexpected happened when the beast landed in the colony's central square. A human woman stepped out from behind one of the simple buildings. She had short, brown hair and wore the plain work clothes of a colonist. In her hands, she carried a metal bowl filled with what looked like kitchen scraps and leftover food. Most shocking of all, she was walking straight toward the monster, the Vorthok's massive head turned toward her, its glowing eyes fixed on this small figure approaching without fear. The creature's claws dug furrows in the ground as it prepared to pounce. Every instinct told it to tear this foolish being apart immediately. "Hey there, beautiful," the woman called out in a calm, friendly voice. "I bet you're tired after that long trip from space." The Vorthok froze. In its entire existence, no living thing had ever spoken to it with kindness. Every creature it had ever encountered had either run away screaming or tried to fight it with weapons. This was completely new. The woman, whose name was Beth, continued walking forward slowly. She had grown up on a farm back on Earth and had spent years working with scared and aggressive animals. Something about this creature reminded her of the wild dogs she used to help at the animal shelter. They would snarl and snap at everyone, but underneath all that anger was usually just fear and pain. "You're probably hungry too," Beth said, setting the bowl down about 10 feet away from the beast. "I made some stew earlier. It might not be what you're used to, but it's got plenty of protein." The Vorthok's head tilted to one side. This was not how its meals were supposed to behave. They were supposed to run and scream and make the hunt exciting. This human was doing something completely different, something that made no sense according to everything the creature had learned about the universe. Up on the alien ship, Commander Veltar watched through his viewing screen with growing confusion. His officers clustered around him, their mandibles clicking with nervous energy. This had never happened before. Not once in 3,000 years of using Vorthok's weapons had they encountered a species that reacted like this. "Why isn't it attacking?" one of his subordinates asked. Veltar had no answer. The Vorthok just stood there, staring at the human woman and the bowl of food. Its killing claws remained extended, but it made no move to strike. Instead, it seemed almost curious about this strange new experience. Beth took a small step back, giving the creature space. "Take your time," she said gently. "I'm not going anywhere. When you're ready to trust me, I'll be right here." The massive predator lowered its head slightly and sniffed the air. The smell of the food reached its nostrils, along with something else it had never encountered before. There was no fear scent coming from this human, no aggression, just a calm, patient presence that the Vorthok found deeply puzzling. For the first time in its violent existence, the galaxy's most feared predator felt something other than rage and hunger. It felt confused, uncertain, and strangely curious about what might happen next. Beth had always been good with difficult animals. Back on Earth, she'd spent 15 years volunteering at rescue shelters, working with dogs and cats that had been hurt by cruel owners. She knew the look in their eyes when they'd been broken by violence and neglect. The Vorthok had that same look, hidden beneath all its rage and aggression. On the second day, she approached the creature again. It hadn't touched the food from yesterday, but she noticed it had stayed close to where she'd left the bowl. That told her something important. Despite all its training as a weapon, the beast was curious about kindness. "I brought you fresh water today," Beth said, setting down a large container alongside another bowl of food, "and I cooked the meat a bit longer. Maybe you'll like it better this way." The Vorthok's crystalline plates shifted and clicked as it watched her movements. Its glowing eyes tracked every step she took, but it didn't attack. Beth could see old scars across its body where chains had cut into its hide. Burn marks from energy weapons dotted its flanks. Someone had definitely used this creature as a tool of war, and they hadn't cared about its well-being at all. "You've had a rough life, haven't you?" she said softly. "Well, that's over now. Nobody's going to hurt you anymore." The other colonists thought she'd completely lost her mind. Tom Bradley, who led the settlement's security team, tried multiple times to convince her to stay away from the alien monster. "Beth, that thing is designed to kill," Tom argued, as he watched her prepare another meal for the creature. "The aliens didn't send it here to make friends. They sent it to wipe us out." Beth paused in her food preparation and looked at him seriously. "Tom, I've seen plenty of animals that people said were too dangerous to save. Dogs that had been beaten so badly they'd bite anyone who came near. Cats that had been starved and abandoned until they were pure aggression. But you know what I learned? There's no such thing as an evil animal. There are only animals that have been treated badly by people who should have known better." Tom shook his head. "This isn't some stray dog, Beth. It's an alien weapon." "Maybe," Beth replied, "but it's also a living thing that's been hurt and scared for who knows how long. I'm going to keep trying." Day after day, Beth visited the Vorthok. She talked to it constantly, telling it about her life on Earth, about the animals she'd helped, about the peaceful life the colonists were trying to build on this new world. Her voice seemed to have a calming effect on the creature. Its aggressive postures became less frequent, and it started eating the food she brought. After a week, Beth noticed the Vorthok had begun cleaning its wounds. After 2 weeks, it started making small chirping sounds when she approached. These weren't the terrifying roars it had made when it first arrived. They sounded almost like the content purring of a giant cat. The breakthrough came on day 18. Beth was sitting on a rock, about 20 feet away from the creature, just talking to it like she always did. The Vorthok suddenly stood up and took several steps toward her. Beth's heart raced, but she forced herself to stay calm and still. "Easy now," she said gently. "I'm not going to hurt you." The massive beast lowered its head until it was just a few feet from her. Very slowly, it extended one of its clawed hands toward her. Beth could see that the claws had retracted partially, a sign that the creature wasn't feeling aggressive. She reached out very carefully and touched the creature's crystalline skin. It was warm and surprisingly smooth. The Vorthok made a deep, rumbling sound that she was sure was its version of a purr. "There we go," Beth whispered, gently stroking the creature's massive head. "You're not so scary after all, are you?" From that day forward, the Vorthok followed Beth everywhere. When she worked in the colony's gardens, it would lie nearby in the shade, watching her with protective attention. When she walked to different parts of the settlement, the creature would pad along behind her like an enormous, deadly pet. Up in their ships, the Zealothi scouts watched in complete amazement. Their ultimate weapon, the creature that had destroyed entire civilizations, was now following a human woman around like a loyal companion. Their reports back to command were met with disbelief and growing panic. The galaxy's most feared predator had been transformed by nothing more than patience, kindness, and understanding. The colonists had started calling the massive creature Rocky because of its crystalline skin that sparkled in the sunlight. What had once been the galaxy's most feared predator was now helping build their new home. Beth watched with amazement as Rocky carefully picked up fallen tree branches with his enormous claws and carried them to the construction site where the crew was building new houses. "Easy there, big guy," called out Mike, one of the construction workers. "Just set it down, right here." Rocky gently placed the heavy log exactly where Mike pointed. The creature had learned to understand simple commands and hand signals within just a few weeks. His movements were surprisingly precise for something so large. When the workers needed to move a particularly heavy piece of equipment, Rocky would position himself carefully and push it into place without damaging anything around it. The most remarkable change was how the children had adapted to having a 6-meter alien predator as their unofficial guardian. Little Amy Chen would sit in Rocky's shadow while she drew pictures in the dirt. 7-year-old Danny Martinez had even started bringing Rocky some of his lunch every day, sharing his sandwich with the massive creature who would very delicately take the food with the tips of his claws. "Mommy, can Rocky come to my birthday party?" Amy asked her mother one afternoon. Lisa Chen looked over at the enormous beast who was currently watching. Amy Color, with the patience of a devoted babysitter. "I suppose so, honey, but we'll need a really big cake." Dr. Patricia Wells, the colony's medical officer and veterinarian, had been studying Rocky's behavior and biology since his transformation began. She ran regular tests on blood samples that Rocky now willingly provided, understanding somehow that the small needle pricks were meant to help him. "Tom, you need to see these results," Patricia told the settlement leader, showing him her latest findings. "His cortisol levels are completely normal now. When he first arrived, his stress hormones were off the charts. This creature was living in a constant state of fight or flight panic. No wonder he was so aggressive." Tom Bradley studied the charts with fascination. "So he was basically having a permanent anxiety attack." "Exactly. Imagine being terrified and angry every single moment of your life. That's what the Zealothi did to him. But now look at these numbers. His brain chemistry is that of a calm, content animal." Beth didn't just tame him. She actually healed him. The most heartwarming moment came when Rocky started making a new sound. Beth was sitting with him one evening after dinner, gently scratching the soft spots between his crystalline plates, like she'd learned he enjoyed. Rocky closed his eyes and began producing a deep, rhythmic rumbling that seemed to come from somewhere deep in his chest. "Oh my goodness," Beth laughed. "You're purring." The sound was so deep and powerful that it made the windows of nearby buildings vibrate slightly. The first time it happened, several colonists came running thinking there was some kind of emergency, but Beth recognized it immediately as the same contented sound that cats make when they're happy. Rocky's purring became a regular evening soundtrack in New Haven Colony. Visitors from other settlements were often startled by the deep thrumming noise, but the locals had grown to love it. Children would sometimes place their hands on Rocky's side just to feel the vibrations. The bond between Beth and Rocky had grown incredibly strong. Whenever Beth had to leave the settlement for supply runs or meetings with other colonies, Rocky would pace restlessly around the area where she'd left him. He would stop eating and spend most of his time staring in the direction she'd gone. The other colonists learned to keep Beth's trips as short as possible because Rocky was clearly miserable without her. When she returned, Rocky's joy was obvious to everyone. He would make excited chirping sounds and gently nuzzle her with his massive head. Beth would laugh and pet him while he purred loudly enough to be heard 3 buildings away. Meanwhile, high above in their surveillance ships, Sci-Fi observers watched these developments with growing horror. Their most successful biological weapon was playing fetch with human children and helping build houses. Reports back to the Empire described scenes that military commanders refused to believe. The Vorthok is helping them construct defensive positions, one commander asked, reading the scout report in disbelief. "No, sir. the scout replied carefully. It's helping them build homes. It appears to be, domesticated. The word sent shockwaves through the Zelathi military hierarchy. In 3,000 years of conquest, nothing like this had ever happened. Their entire strategy was based on the assumption that Vorthax were uncontrollable forces of destruction. If humans could turn them into pets, everything the Empire believed about warfare had suddenly become worthless. Word spread across the galaxy faster than anyone could have imagined. Within weeks, every major civilization had heard the impossible story. Humans had turned a Vorthok into a pet. The news traveled through trade routes, diplomatic channels, and even pirate networks. Everyone wanted to know more about these strange mammals who showed no fear of the universe's most deadly predator. The first ships started, arriving just 2 months after Rocky's transformation. Beth watched from the settlement's observation tower as sleek alien vessels descended from the sky. Their crews eager to witness what they'd heard was surely just an exaggerated rumor. We've got representatives from the Corvani Republic, the Bethran Alliance, and at least 6 other worlds I can't even pronounce, reported Kevin Nash, who handled communications for New Haven Colony. They all want to see Rocky in action. Beth felt nervous about turning Rocky into some kind of circus act. But Tom Bradley convinced her that this could be an incredible opportunity for humanity. If other species saw what humans could accomplish with patience and kindness, it might open doors that would benefit all of Earth's colonies. The demonstration took place in the colony's central square, with dozens of alien observers watching from what they considered a safe distance. Beth walked out with Rocky following close behind her, his crystalline plates catching the afternoon sunlight. Several of the smaller alien species immediately stepped backward when they saw the massive creature up close. "Okay, Rocky," Beth said, in the same calm voice she'd always used with him. "Show our guests how smart you are. Sit." Rocky immediately lowered his haunches, his massive form settling onto the ground with surprising grace. The alien observers murmured among themselves in various languages, clearly amazed that the creature had responded to a simple verbal command. "Now, lie down," Beth continued. Rocky stretched out on his belly, keeping his glowing eyes fixed on Beth, with obvious attention and affection. This simple act of obedience sent ripples of shock through the watching crowd. Many of them had lost entire fleets to creatures just like this one. But the real showstopper came with the next command. "Roll over, boy." Without hesitation, Rocky rolled onto his back, exposing his vulnerable belly to everyone present. This was the ultimate display of trust in the animal kingdom, and every species watching understood its significance. A Corvani ambassador actually fainted at the sight, his insectoid body crumpling to the ground as his security detail rushed to help him. "Good boy," Beth laughed, scratching Rocky's exposed stomach while he purred loud enough to make the ground vibrate. "You're such a good boy." The demonstrations became a regular event as more ships arrived. Beth taught Rocky to fetch specific objects, to move carefully around groups of small beings, and even to perform simple tricks, like shaking hands with his massive claws. Each display left the alien observers more amazed, and, frankly, more terrified of humanity's potential. Kevin's communication station became overwhelmed with incoming messages from across the galaxy. Trade offers poured in daily, each more desperate than the last. The Corvani Republic was dealing with swarms of crystal wasps that were destroying their mining operations. They offered exclusive mineral rights in exchange for human help in managing the creatures. The Bethran Alliance had an even more serious problem. Their own biological weapons had started rebelling against their handlers, and they needed someone who understood how to calm aggressive creatures. They offered advanced medical technology in exchange for consultation services. Most shocking of all was a carefully worded message from the Zelathi Empire themselves. Despite their pride and their history of conquest, they quietly inquired about possible consulting arrangements regarding their other biological assets. which had apparently become difficult to control since news of Rocky's domestication had spread. "Beth," Kevin said one morning, staring at his screen full of messages. "I've got 17 different species asking for help with dangerous animals, 12 trade delegations wanting to establish permanent embassies, and at least 20 marriage proposals from various alien nobles who think marrying a human will give them access to our animal taming abilities." Beth laughed, scratching Rocky behind his favorite spot near his crystalline ridge. "Marriage proposals? Really? Really? Apparently, the galaxy thinks we're some kind of magical beast whisperers now. They're not afraid of us because they think we'll fight them. They're afraid because they think we'll make friends with all their weapons and turn them against their former masters." Rocky purred contentedly as Beth continued, petting him, completely unaware that his transformation had changed humanity's position in the galaxy forever. The species that everyone had dismissed as weak prey animals had suddenly become the most sought-after allies in known space, all because one woman had shown kindness to a creature everyone else feared. The age of human diplomacy had begun, and it was built on the simple foundation of treating others with compassion and understanding. 6 months after that first encounter, Beth found herself standing in the most important building in the galaxy. The Galactic Council chamber stretched out before her like a massive amphitheater, with representatives from hundreds of different worlds seated in carefully arranged sections based on their atmospheric needs and body types. Some breathed oxygen like humans, others required methane or hydrogen atmospheres, and sat in specialized environmental suits. Rocky stood beside her, wearing a custom-made collar that the colony's metalworker had crafted from local materials. Engraved on the collar was the symbol of Earth's new organization, the Interspecies Animal Rehabilitation Center. The massive creature looked calm and alert, his glowing eyes scanning the assembled crowd with curious interest rather than the murderous rage he'd once shown to all living things. "Honorable delegates," Beth began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's advanced sound system. "6 months ago, your species knew humans as simple farmers and colonists trying to build new lives on distant worlds. Today, I stand before you representing something entirely different." She gestured to Rocky, who immediately sat down at her signal, his crystalline plates catching the light from the chamber's artificial suns. Several delegates in the front rows instinctively leaned back, but Rocky remained perfectly still and calm. "My species doesn't offer you bigger weapons or stronger armies," Beth continued. "We don't promise to help you conquer your enemies or destroy your rivals. Instead, we offer something that might be more powerful than any weapon you've ever imagined. We offer understanding." Rocky responded to a subtle hand gesture by lying down, then rolling over to expose his vulnerable belly. The sight of the galaxy's former ultimate predator displaying complete trust sent whispers racing through the assembled delegates. Many of them remembered the terror these creatures had once inspired. "Every dangerous animal in the galaxy was once part of a natural ecosystem," Beth explained. "Every aggressive creature was once a baby that learned its behaviors from the world around it. When we see a monster, we ask ourselves, what happened to make it this way? How can we help it remember what it was supposed to be?" Behind her, Rocky had returned to a sitting position and was now demonstrating his ability to follow complex commands. Beth held up different colored cards, and Rocky would touch the corresponding colored spots on a large board with his claws. It was a simple intelligence test, but the fact that he could perform it at all amazed the watching delegates. "This Vorthok now helps us manage our rehabilitation center," Beth said. "He assists with intake procedures for other dangerous species, helps transport heavy equipment, and even comforts newly arrived animals who are scared and confused. The creature you once feared has become our most valuable assistant in healing other broken animals." The demonstration was interrupted when Commander Veltar of the Zeliphi Empire approached the speaking platform. The proud warrior's mandibles clicked nervously and his usually straight posture seemed slightly hunched with embarrassment. "Human delegate," he said, his voice carrying the weight of his species' wounded pride. "The Zealothi Empire formally requests assistance with our remaining biological warfare assets, since news of the Vorthax transformation, spread through our forces. The other creatures have become increasingly difficult to manage. Several have refused to attack designated targets, and to have actually turned on their handlers." Beth smiled gently and reached up to scratch Rocky behind his favorite spot near his crystalline ridge. The massive creature purred so loudly that the sound echoed through the entire chamber, a rumbling bass note that made some of the smaller delegates' chairs vibrate. "Commander, we'd be honored to help," Beth replied. "Every creature deserves a chance to remember what it's like to be treated with kindness instead of cruelty." The formal vote was almost unanimous. Humanity was officially recognized as the galaxy's premier species for aggressive fauna, rehabilitation, and management. Trade agreements were signed that would bring Earth's colonies advanced technology in exchange for human expertise in animal behavior and psychology. Over the following months, rehabilitation centers opened on dozens of worlds. Human volunteers worked alongside local species to transform former weapons of war into productive members of society. Crystal wasps learned to help with mining operations instead of destroying them. Bioengineered predators became guard animals for peaceful settlements, instead of tools of conquest. Beth returned to New Haven Colony as humanity's first galactic animal behavior ambassador. Rocky came with her, of course, and resumed his duties, helping with construction projects and playing with the human children who had never learned to fear him. The galaxy had discovered something remarkable. The species they'd dismissed as weak and defenseless possessed a strength that no weapon could match. Humans could take the most feared and hated creatures in the universe and help them find their way back to peace. In a cosmos full of warriors and conquerors, humanity had become something entirely new, the healers of the stars. And it all started with one woman who looked at a monster and saw a frightened animal that just needed someone to care.